Tonight on Tap Out Talk, the WWE Draft, Part 2 for the year of 2023 on Monday Night Raw. I'm your host, Bryan, the Hype, Ballard, and we're back at it again. Quick questions, couple things to think about tonight. The WWE thinking about updating their record books, so to speak, with this draft. We're going to talk about that. Also, is there a trios tag style coming to the WWE of the results of these drafts? And finally, Edge. Does the WWE have its idea of the next superstar that they vision as the next Edge? And is he actually going to be a free agent? All that and more on this episode, so without further ado, let's get in. Alright, so round one on Monday Night Raw, and here's what we get. We get Triple H kicking it off much like he did on the SmackDown edition of this year's draft. And when he gets in there, he's ready to roll. And he says, let's get this started. So, without further ado, just like what we did on night one with SmackDown taking lead in the first round of picks, this pool and separated pool is actually going to be Raw getting the lead tonight. By the way, if you missed the very first episode of this, I'm going to link it right up here for us. That way, you guys can get caught up to what's going on now. But I'm assuming you've already seen that. So, our very first pick for Raw will be none other than Rhea Ripley. A couple things WWE would like you to know about Rhea Ripley. 1, she is the current SmackDown Women's Champion. 2, she's a 2023 Royal Rumble winner. And 3, she's the Triple Crown Women's Champion. She's been a champion on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. But next is going to be SmackDown's pick, and Triple H will announce that they are going to take the United States Championship in Austin Theory over to SmackDown. So, the current United States Champion, as I mentioned, also he's a 2022 Money in the Bank winner, and he defeated John Cena at WrestleMania 38. Interesting thought about Austin Theory. I feel like he is a future star in the making. A young legend killer, if you will. And I feel like they're just going to go further and further with his potential talent to be a main eventer and really push that to the hard. Next up is Raw's next pick, and that is going to be none other than Seth freaking Rollins. He has actually held 14 championships in the WWE. He's a Grand Slam champion, and he's a former Royal Rumble winner and a former Money in the Bank winner. Who can forget that infamous cash-in at WrestleMania on Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar to save the main event? Seth Rollins staying on Monday Night Raw is definitely a good solid call, and I think this will, with Cody Rhodes being drafted the other night to Raw, is going to maintain our Night of Champions final for the World Championship. Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes. Up next, SmackDown gets their final pick of the first round, and it is going to be none other than Charlotte Flair. A couple things WWE would like you to remember and know about Charlotte. She's a 14-time women's champion. 14-time women's champion. Curious question for you guys out there in the audience. Which one of those 14-time championships run is the most memorable for you guys? I do remember her having a great match on Raw where she actually did her submission hold on a barrier out in the audience. That was pretty cool. But I also remember the main event of Mania defending and having some matches there. Also, we've got the 2020 Royal Rumble winner in Charlotte. And also, she wants you guys to remember, in case you weren't aware, she's the daughter of the infamous Hall of Famer Ric Flair. Charlotte going to SmackDown is probably a better fit than Raw. They're going to want some of these kind of main event ladies over there, and I think that's a great choice. So let's get on to the second round. This time we get the WWE Hall of Famer and the five-time WCW champion, Booker T, and his wife, Queen Sharmell, also a Hall of Famer due to last year's induction. They come out, they pander to the crowd a little bit, and they reveal Raw's first draft pick of the second round, and that is none other than Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, also procuring the Undisputed Tag Team Championships. They want you to remember, Sami is a 3-time Intercontinental Champion. Kevin Owens is actually a Grand Slam champion himself. And who can forget their great match at WrestleMania, ending in a great story fashion against the Usos. Speaking of which, SmackDown makes its first pick, and I find it very interesting that even though they were not drafted with the bloodline to SmackDown, the Usos are staying on SmackDown via tag team draft. My question on this is, if you wanted the bloodline, why did you not just draft all of the bloodline? Why do we have to take a separate pick and almost waste a pick to take the Usos? Even though the two Usos are not really nearly a waste. They're one of the greatest tag teams of all time. They're a former 8-time tag team champion. They hold the records for the longest tag team title reign in WWE history. And they are the sons, in case you forgot, of the legendary Hall of Famer Rikishi. Up next, we're going to get Raw's draft pick, and that is going to be none other than Judgment Day. That's right, Damian Priest, Finn Balor, and Dominic Mysterio. Interesting note about all these factions getting drafted, and especially I think of the Brawling Brutes, and I think of the Club, and I think of, in this case, Judgment Day. You notice a little theme of trios getting drafted, and groups of 3 being created in the WWE. Could the WWE be looking at a version of the Tag Team Championships? I don't think they would directly do that because of AEW, but I do think the WWE would be infamous for playing their little fabulous Freebird rule in order to make the tag team scene a little more interesting. Maybe we're entering the era of the Freebird rule being a lot more than just the New Day. And if you guys don't know what that is, the Freebird rule simply means that tag teams can be held by a group of 3 guys and they can rotate who defends the title. I think that would actually freshen up the WWE Tag Team division in the modern era by having more Freebird eligible wrestling factions. Speaking of wrestling factions, SmackDown takes their first pick of the second round, and they're actually going to take the LWO, the newly reformed Latino World Order. If you guys weren't aware, the Latino World Order was formed with Eddie Guerrero in WCW. Rey Mysterio was a member. In this modern version, Rey Mysterio is a current member, and he's reformed it with Santos Escobar, Joaquin Wilde, Cruz del Toro, and Zelina Vega as their Latino representative, or Latina. So, what we have here is a faction going to draft to SmackDown, and I feel like the LWO fits very well with the SmackDown national TV vibe. We're moving on to round 3, and it's none other than one of my favorite legendary Hall of Famers of all time, HBK Shawn Michaels. And he wants you to know he's not going to lay down for just anybody. And unfortunately, his counterpart, Adam, did not make it to the draft tonight, or wasn't able to do it. So Shawn pulled double duty and drafted announcements for both Raw and SmackDown. His first announcement was the current women's tag team champions. That's Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. They want you to remember that Liv Morgan is a former women's champion just recently in the last year. They also want you to remember that Raquel is a former NXT women's champion. And these are the currently crowned champions of the women's division. Up next, SmackDown, it takes none other than, and they're not ready for, Asuka, a former 3-time women's champion in her own right. She's a Grand Slam champion. She's a former Royal Rumble winner and a former Money in the Bank winner. Who can forget? She literally climbed the corporate ladder in one of my favorite Money in the Banks when they actually, in 2020, filmed it in the WWE headquarters where they had to fight through the building and literally climb the corporate ladder to win. So, Asuka is your current SmackDown draft pick. Up next, we are going to go with the tag division again, and I find it very interesting that they only drafted the New Day in its form of Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. No Big E in sight. This tells me one of two things. This tells me that they do not want you to remember Big E as a member of the New Day. They also want you to not remember that because Big E, when he makes his eventual return, once he's done with rehab from that neck, he makes his return. They want you to remember him but slightly forget about him for just the right moment. And when he makes that return, it's going to be a perfect opportunity for a heel turn or a perfect opportunity for a major babyface return. We'll have to look to see which route the WWE likes to go. But either way, Big E is now going to be a main eventer. They want you guys to remember that the New Day are an 11-time tag team champions and kind of the ones that freshened up and brought back the Freebird rule. They want you to remember that Kofi Kingston is a Grand Slam champion himself. Who can forget Kofi Mania? And also, Xavier Woods is a former King of the Ring winner. And I think the most prestigious title that you guys are forgetting about is the infamous Up Up, Down Down Championship that also comes along with this faction. Let's move left right to the next thing. The next draft pick, that is. And that is going to be the Brawling Brutes, another trios tag group. Now, moving to SmackDown Live. Sheamus, Ridge Holland, and Butch. You're always going to be Pete Dunne to me. But the Brawling Brutes will be making their way to SmackDown Live and actually remaining and being able to compete on the brand. We move on to round 4, and we get a nice surprise with Eric Bischoff coming out to announce picks, along with none other than Rob Van Dam. Why not have Mr. Monday Night on this round of the draft? And speaking of the Raw draft, we actually get the selection of WWE Hall of Famer Trish Stratus. Here's my question. Why did we draft Trish Stratus? Is she here for the long haul, or is she here for just a little short time? But either way, she is a Hall of Famer. She's a 7-time women's champion. She's the first women's champion to ever main event Raw. Who can forget that infamous match with Lita? And ultimately, we're going to go to SmackDown's pick of this round, and that is none other than Karrion Kross and Scarlett Bordeaux. They want you to remember that Karrion Kross is a 2-time NXT champion. They want you to remember his signature move is the Doomsday Saito. But what they don't want you to remember is his Raw debut mask that he ditched years ago. I think this is a mistake keeping Karrion Kross on SmackDown along with Scarlett. I feel like he should have been Raw bound. I feel like he's had the majority of the feuds that he can have on SmackDown. And I would like to see Karrion Kross be a real competitor for a main title one of these days. And I think that could start with a nice showing at Money in the Bank. Let's move on to Raw's first pick. And they're going to take a tag team. A MMA style tag team. A former UFC tandem of Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. Ronda is a former 3-time women's champion. And Shayna is a former 2-time NXT champion. You just know as these two are fighting as a tag team, eventually they'll dismantle. Or could we see an establishment of the original 4 horsewomen of the UFC? Up next, SmackDown takes its final pick of the 4th round, and that is going to be none other than LA Knight. So, great matches on SmackDown. LA Knight is going to remain on SmackDown, and that's perfectly fine. I think he's still got much more work to do, and so I definitely think that's a solid pick. And I'd like to see what that mid-card United States title is going to do for us. Maybe a match in the future and a long-term feud with Austin Theory, and a battle of the Young Guns here are going to take off. We get to round 5, and oh, you didn't know? We got the Road Dogg, Jesse James. And we got another nice surprise in Molly Holly, Hall of Famer, coming back to help us out with picking the right talent. So the first pick of this round is going to be none other than a tag team of Braun Strowman and Ricochet. Ricochet is a former Intercontinental Champion and a former United States Champion and a former Lucha Underground favorite of mine in Prince Puma under the mask. We also got Braun Strowman, who is a former WWE Universal Champion himself. And he's not unfamiliar with masks either, as you remember him as the black sheep of the infamous Wyatt family. Oh, those were the days. Prince Puma and the Black Sheep. So, moving ahead, we've got SmackDown's draft pick of Shotzi Blackheart. Why not? We need some green hair with a scary stare going to SmackDown. Let's move on. We've got Bronson Reed. With his signature move, the Tsunami, he's going to go to WWE Raw and a former NXT North American champion. He's a monster. He is a monster, a bowling ball that's just tearing through the WWE roster. And I do think that he should remain around the Raw era, get a little exposure, and continue to be a threat on the main event. Moving next, there's a tag team action going to SmackDowns from NXT, and that is in the form of Pretty Deadly, Elton Prince and Kit Wilson. If you guys aren't familiar with their work in NXT, they got a little bit of the Rockers vibe mixed with the Young Bucks. Just a really bit of younger Young Bucks of the WWE. So, we've got a former two-time NXT Tag Team Champions getting drafted to the Blue brand. We are at the 6th round of this draft. We've got Teddy Long, holla 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 playa, and we've got John Bradshaw Layfield, JBL, leading off the charge for us on this one. And Raw is going to take none other than the Alpha Academy, Otis and Chad Gable. A couple things you guys want to remember is they are former Raw Tag Team Champions. Also, Otis is a former Money in the Bank winner himself. Again, he literally climbed the corporate ladder at WWE Money in the Bank. So, moving ahead, SmackDown is going to take their pick in Rick Boogs. Okay, we'll see what they do with that. Rick Boogs, I see again being thrown into that mid-card scene, along with an LA Knight, and among others. But let's get back to some tag team drafting and NXT call-ups, because Raw is going to grab from the NXT pool, and they're going to take the former women's tag team champion, Katana Carter and Kaden. And then the longest women's tag team title reign in NXT history for these young ladies. Up next, SmackDown is going to take a guy we haven't seen in a very long time. Getting called up from NXT is Cameron Grimes. And he will be the final official pick of the Monday Night Raw version of the draft. But wait, we're not done here. We're moving right ahead to WWE Raw Talk, live right after Monday Night Raw. And here on Tap Out Talk, we're going to call this round 7 of that draft pick. And say, if you guys want a little bit more of a pre-draft talk, check out me and my tag team partners up above right here at the Wrestling Fans Inside Podcast, where we did our mock pre-draft and we actually pitted our teams against each other to see who did it best. Check us out. So we've got round 7 here on Raw Talk, and the first picks that I'm going to give you, I want you to remember that Raw is going to get the majority of these picks due to being a 3-hour show, which leaves SmackDown with a really small 2 amounts to just, I guess, 1 for each hour. So we've got Dana Brooke going to Raw. Dana Brooke, she's still around, believe it or not. I heard she makes a mean bean casserole back in catering. I'm just kidding, Dana. I'm really pulling for you, and I'm hoping you're getting a little more screen time and you're able to kind of get out of that back area. Maybe a valet job wouldn't be bad for Dana, or something in a tag team. Hey, everybody also is getting another female to Raw, and that's other than Nikki Cross. Looking a little scary and psychotic, but no longer a superhero. Nikki Cross is going to the Raw brand with all of her screaming fury. We also got one of my favorites that shocks me that took this long to draft in Johnny Gargano. I want to make a special note that Tommaso Ciampa was not drafted in this draft, nor was he listed as a free agent. That makes me really consider and wonder what's going on with his future. But I digress. Johnny Gargano is definitely worthy of a draft pick, and I thought he'd be a little higher on the list. So Mr. Johnny Wrestling is all Monday Night Raw. Up next, we do have the tag team of Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza going to Monday Night Raw. They've got drafted to Raw. I'll be honest with you guys, I hope he's not drafted to unemployment. I'm a little worried because will they even make a Raw appearance? Let's do this. Let's play a little drinking game this season, and anytime they appear on Monday Night Raw, we have to take a shot. One shot for each of these guys for a Monday Night Raw appearance. Moving ahead, we get another draft pick. The famous cruiserweight, Akira Tozawa, going to Monday Night Raw, and again, I do question in what format he's going to be used on the blue brand. We might want to add him to our drinking game as well. Now it gets exciting. Raw takes the newly refreshed Piper Niven into their ladies division. I like Piper Niven. I think she brings the unique style and look. I feel like she fills the Nia Jax role that was, removed a couple of years ago. And I feel like Piper Niven, we can see a little bit more. I can't help but wonder if she would have fit in really well as the female in the Brawling Brutes. But I am noticing that we're starting to separate the females from the staples. See Judgment Day and see others. Moving up next, Raw is going to take another pick, another lady. I'm seeing a theme here. They're taking the ever-popular Tegan Nox. They're adding her to the red brand. And then we also have Xia Li coming up from NXT, going to the Raw brand as well. And just when you think the Raw brand is done drafting ladies, they're going to take the combo pair of Emma and Riddick Moss, the former Madcap Moss. So, Raw is grabbing a lot of development talent, but I don't mind Riddick going there for a fresh perspective along with Emma. Speaking of drafting from NXT, they're going to take a trio, another trio. You see what's going on here. Freebird rule, anybody. We got Jinder Mahal, Veer Mahan. Start the memes of Veer is coming to Monday Night Raw again. Let's do a countdown days. I don't want you guys taking shots for every day it takes Veer Mahan to come to Raw. Okay? Drink responsibly. But we also have Saurav Gujar, also a part of the group. Alright, if you guys don't know who this big Mark Henry looking guy is, this is Odyssey Jones being drafted as the final Monday Night Raw pick. He is an NXT call-up. I think it's a little early for him to have been called up. He spent some time in NXT. He's also spent a lot of time injured in NXT. And I know the WWE likes their big guys, but I think that he could have taken a little more growth in the NXT brand. So my fear is that his call-up will not be wasted. But ever popular, ever entertaining, Odyssey Jones. SmackDown's final picks from the Raw Talk draft. We're going to get Tamina. I think Tamina going to SmackDown Live is an excellent pick. The question is, what do you do with Tamina? I'm going to be honest with you guys. She might fit in pretty well with the Bloodline if they do some restructuring there. Could you imagine a future of the Bloodline with no Usos, Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, Solo Sikoa, and Tamina Snuka maybe? Might not be a bad idea. Everybody knows Tamina, but not everybody sees Tamina wrestle all the time. Moving on. SmackDown gets a fine draft pick. And one of my call-ups that, could have been early, but probably just about right, in Grayson Waller. Grayson Waller is the guy that you put all the face NXT champions against. He can work a match. He can get heat. And I think going to the SmackDown Live brand is going to be a great fit for him. So, a couple things I want you guys to be aware of with this draft. A lot of NXT call-ups like Grayson Waller. And let's get into our final thoughts overall. So, the first thing I want you guys to be aware of. The draft is officially over. But we're not all the way done. If you look at parts 1 and 2 of my Tap Out talk here, we broke down and kind of covered how it shaped out. But I want you guys to keep in mind a few things. We have free agents. And the WWE never really explained this free agent rule. They never explained it, how they're going to get them, how they're going to sign them. I personally would like to see the WWE use free agents as a way of recruiting. And I would like the WWE to see if they can try to have maybe some backstage segments where they're trying to sign the hottest free agents in the company to show up for their brand. So, Brock Lesnar is a free agent. Baron Corbin is a free agent. Cedric Alexander, Shelton Benjamin, and Elias are all free agents. Now, Zion Quinn. You guys might be wondering who the heck Zion Quinn is. He's an NXT call-up. He is very green, very new. I'm surprised they called him up this quick, but he is a free agent. Who says that he has to come to Raw or SmackDown? He could be a free agent that's free agenting back to NXT. Who knows? We also have Amos and MVP as free agents. Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler are free agents. And believe it or not, this next name that I'm going to give you, the WWE at one point considered them to be the next Edge. And he's a free agent at this point. And that is Von Wagner. Von Wagner was actually considered to be the next Edge of the WWE. I hate to tell you guys, he's got some great in-ring moves, but nobody's Edge. Now, I also want you guys, in addition to that free agent class, pay attention to how the WWE uses that in the upcoming weeks. Triple H told us there's a plan for this draft and how it unfolds, and I'm hoping they use this to the advantage. They just don't randomly have guys show up. Also, I want you guys to pay attention to the non-draft eligible players in this one. Bray Wyatt and John Cena were not draft eligible. It's interesting. Bray Wyatt was not a free agent. He wasn't even mentioned. I can understand John Cena not being mentioned. Makes total sense. The guy is off doing Hollywood. He comes back. You know, you can't dedicate him to a brand. But Bray Wyatt makes it very interesting. And it makes me wonder if his days are truly maybe numbered. No Uncle Howdy either. It's very odd, as we talked about. So I want you guys to think about some of those final thoughts. And also, I want you guys to think of this. The state of NXT in 1 week when this draft takes effect on May 8th. What's going to happen to NXT? To me, NXT was still developing. And I'm a little concerned with NXT being able to rebuild from the ground up. I know we have the NIL program. And maybe there is some talent there that, you know, they're going to rely on. Could we be entering the NIL generation and version of NXT? We had the black and gold brand. We had the tie-dye brand, the 2.0. We had the Revital brand of the black and gold. And now, maybe we're entering the NIL NXT brand. Guys, keep those thoughts in mind, but don't keep them final. I've been your host, Bryan, the Hype, Ballard, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Good night. And guys, like it's what we always say around here. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. And it's not goodbye, but it's what? Game over.